Hello and welcome to the daily newspaper analysis and initiative of the UPSConline.com and Ambition IAS. Today we shall be discussing the newspaper of the 6th of January 2018. So coming to the first article, this is an article on the editorial page of the Hindu. It is read as "This too is a right." The opinion is that the right to sexual privacy makes the law on adultery open to constitutional scrutiny. So the context is that of the adultery law, which is being examined by the Constitutional Bench of the Supreme Court. Now, coming to some background regarding adultery law and the entire topic of adultery as a whole. Now, what do you understand by adultery? Adultery means any sexual intercourse between consenting adults outside of marriage will amount to adultery. Now, what is the background of this law is that this under section 497 of the IPC, adultery is a criminal offense in the country, but there are certain discriminatory aspects relating to this law. Now, for example, there is a husband H1 and he has a wife W1, and there is another couple where the husband is H2 and the wife is W2. Now, if there is a situation where the wife 1 and husband 2 have an adulterous relationship, that is a sexual relationship outside of marriage, this is amounting to adultery. So now what is the issue is that if the wife 2 wants to convict her own husband, wants to file a complaint against her husband for adultery, she cannot do it. This is not permissible under law. Also, here the husband 1 can file a complaint against husband 2 for having an adulterous relationship with his wife without his knowledge. So only this route is allowed. Also, this is something of a choice. If the husband 1 is aware of this adulterous relationship, then he can choose not to file this complaint. In this scenario, there are two issues. First and foremost, there is no provision for the husband 1 to file a complaint against the wife. So in this case, the law is largely discriminating against the men only. That is the first aspect. The second aspect of this law that is conflicting is that the wife is treated as a property of her husband, because it is the husband who can claim another person, who can convict another person, who can file complaint against another person for having an incestuous relationship with his wife, and this cannot happen the other way around. So the wife is being treated as a property of her husband. So this is another issue that is a conflicting one in this case. Now, the issues that are largely being discussed in this bill are first and foremost that should adultery be a criminal offense or it should not be a criminal offense. Another aspect is that of equality of women, equality in the law itself. Also, the fact that women are treated as objects. So, this particular editorial steps out of these three basic discussions and has largely brought about a new issue, which is that of sexual privacy of an individual. So that is a de novo aspect that has been reflected and brought about in this editorial, which I shall be discussing. Now, the issue is that sexual privacy has not been acknowledged in this law, and all debate around it is limited to these issues and not that of sexual privacy of an individual. Also, the fact that this is an archaic law of 1860, which is a reflection of the then Victorian notions of sexuality, and to prescribe a criminal penalty for a voluntary sexual activity is strikingly disappropriate. Now, this was a British era law, and the Victorian principles at that time, considered sexual activity as something that was to be followed as per the Catholic norms and rules. So those laws largely stemming from that. Also, the times were at that point of time, the women were not so empowered, and patriarchy was something that was very deep rooted. And now, because times have changed, the law definitely is demanding a change. Further, the right to privacy is something that is enshrined within our constitutional fundamental rights, and this right to privacy should also include the right to bodily integrity, self-determination, and sexual autonomy has been advocated in this editorial. Further, the editorial brings about the fact that criminalizing adultery will result in a paternalistic attitude of the state, which is telling individuals how to lead their lives and behaviors to adopt. And also, this moralistic undertones, of imposing what an ideal life means is something that is unacceptable in the modern free societies where democracy is prevalent. So, this paternalistic attitude of the state is something that is not acceptable in the modern world. Also, some foreign examples have been given. For example, none of the European countries criminalize adultery. Also, in most of South America, adultery is not a crime. Further, in many states in the US have repealed adultery laws. Also, in 2012, there was a working group of the UN which called upon countries to do away with laws penalizing adultery. So, definitely the international standards should be adopted by the country, and the international spirit is against criminalizing adultery and acknowledging the sexual autonomy of an individual. This issue is also, interrelated to the issue of homosexuality in the country under Article 377. When a number of times it has been argued that sexual autonomy and sexual privacy is a personal aspect of an individual, and the state should not tell what practices are normal and what are abnormal, or what is acceptable and what is not acceptable in a free democratic country. So this can be interrelated with that aspect as well. Also, regarding the privacy of transgender communities, the government has called upon ensuring privacy to the transgender community. So there also privacy should include sexual privacy, is what the editorial is bringing about. So in the end, the basic analysis is that the majoritarian sexual morality, should not be imposed upon individual legitimate privacy interests. So that is the opinion of this editorial, and it being a new aspect to the adultery law, it becomes important there. Now coming to the next article, enabling law. Now, the opinion is that Supreme Court's timeline to ensure full access for the disabled to public facilities is welcome. The context is itself given right here, that the Supreme Court has issued a timeline to ensure access to the access for the disabled to public facilities. So that is the context. Now, coming to some background, this judgment by the Supreme Court has come in respect of a PIL which was filed by a visually impaired activist. So that is the context of this editorial. Now, the background is that recently there was a new bill, that is Rights of Persons with Disabilities, in the year 2016. This bill has replaced the 1995 bill, which was the Persons with Disability Act of 1995, was replaced by the 2016 Act, which is the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act. So this is the background of this entire editorial. Now, some issues have been brought about which are very, very important from essay point of view, from social issue point of view. Disability is a very important topic for UPSC. It can be analyzed and used across several answers. So that is what is the importance of this editorial, and it has some wonderful solutions that have been given. Also, some good linkages have been drawn, which I shall be delving into later. So let's begin the discussion on the issues. First and foremost, a fact has been given that as per the census 2011, disabled people constitute 2.21% of India's population. So this is one figure that I would suggest you should remember, 2.21% of the Indian population. Now, a law for the disabled was passed 2 decades back, that is 1995, as I mentioned. That this law, despite existing, little has been done by governments in realizing the guarantees that were given under this law to the disabled people. Also, all government buildings are now mandated to become accessible by June 2019. Now, even if you do not remember that till when, what are the deadlines, you should remember that what all are the aspects that are being covered. So the aspect part is important to be reproduced in the answers, even if you cannot reproduce these dates and timelines and all, because I don't think there is scope for elaborating so much in the UPSC answers. So first and foremost, all government buildings need to be made accessible. Another aspect that has been discussed is that of railway stations should, become accessible, should become disabled friendly. That is the opinion that has been given. Also, government public transport needs to become aligned to the needs of the differently abled people. So that is the entire 3 arenas which have been covered under this Supreme Court timeline. Also, this, an opinion has been given that this is an opportunity towards steering policy and practice in direction of a universal and a humane system. So that is the opinion. Further, another issue is that for long there has been an ignoring of the aspirations of those with disabilities, and also an ignoring of the letters of the law. So this is a major concern in the country. Government should harness newer technologies. Now, a wonderful solution has been given. Now, before I go into the solution, I would like to introduce an idea that whenever you are writing UPSC answers, it is expected that some original innovation is given. Now, whenever there is an original innovation, it doesn't mean that you have to personally innovate something. Of course, if you can do that, it is a welcome step, but a different innovation has to be given. So in those categories, that it is rare that such opinions are extracted from the editorials, and this is one stark example of a different innovative idea which you can reproduce in your answers, and that is what is the importance of this idea. Now, the idea is that governments can harness new technologies for enabling the disabled people. For example, geolocation, which can help enabling targeted provision of services to the disabled. Example is that aggregating the travel requirements of disabled peoples through smartphone connectivity. Also, providing affordable shared transport using accessible vehicles. All these ideas can be used, and these people can be connected through geolocation. This is a wonderful idea that has been given. Another idea is that enabling disabled should be seen in alignment with the smart city projects. Now, if you suppose you have to answer a question on the smart city project, or urban development for that matter, in that scenario, largely focus of the students is on economic aspects, the political aspects of it. But whenever you want to discuss such topics, you should also expand your discussion to the social aspects. And if you mention a point that the smart city project should be in alignment with the goals of facilitating government and even for that matter private infrastructure for the disabled, it will be a wonderful and it will be an innovative new point. So this is how you should interlink in UPSC mains answers. That is the idea that I want to convey. So definitely in smart city, it should be aligned with the smart city projects. Also, a new idea has been given that retrofitting of all railway stations with simple solutions like portable step ladders, to help board and exit trains. Now, why I'm giving this specific example? Because this adds a degree of practicality to your answers. This example of simple portable step ladder will add a lot of value and weight to your answers. Now, this should not only be limited for the disabled, this can also be used by the elderly who find it difficult to board trains because of the difficult infrastructure of the railways. So that is one issue. Also, a good opinion has been given in this article, which is that the issue of the issue of a political will to change the designs of public facilities, and not merely something of an economic aspect. It is rather the will that will ensure the basic changes. Further, it is stressed that India, being a 2 trillion economy, can definitely ensure to its population of 2.21% some basic rights which they are very much entitled to. So that is what is the spirit of this opinion, and the opinion is a good one. I would suggest that you should use it in your article, in your answers, and the article has immense importance. Now, coming to the next article, Game for Talks. This is an article on the resumption of dialogue between the two Koreas. And the opinion is that it reignites hopes of a détente. This is a word. This is a French word actually, which means easing of stress and hostilities. Now, it can be used. It is a common word in diplomacy, but still, I have had an opinion, and I have seen that UPSC is always welcomed simplicity in answers. So if somebody wants to use this word, you can, but that is what is the meaning of this word. Now, the context is that the recent thaw that is emerging between North Korea and South Korea, where North Korea has expressed its willingness to negotiate with South Korea, and this has been welcomed by South Korea. also. So that is the context. Now, some issues are important in this regard. First and foremost, this resumption of talks will happen after 2 years. Therefore, there is a hope for denuclearization in the region in the aftermath of North Korea gaining nuclear capabilities. Also, another issue is that the US has consented for delaying the controversial joint military exercise. This was also suggested by China. This joint military exercise is something that North Korea has for long objected to. So because US has also shown some willingness in this regard is a welcome step. Also, the issue of Seoul launching the US-based THAAD is something that is important in this context. The THAAD is a Terminal High Altitude Area Defense System. The THAAD, Terminal High Altitude Area Defense System, was launched in Seoul by the US, but this had, been largely criticized and objected to by China, as it feared that the radars of the THAAD could snoop on Chinese security infrastructure. So this was a major contentious issue regarding this entire tensions in the Korean Peninsula. Now, this is also the issue why China has so many interests in resolving the Korean Peninsula issue. So China has also advocated for opening and resumption of talks between North Korea and South Korea. That is the importance of this discussion. Also, North Korea sees recognition of its country as a nuclear power, and assumes that this recognition will result in a vantage point from where North Korea could negotiate a rollback of the crippling international sanctions and reconciliation with the US. Now, recently we have seen that the UN has also further increased sanctions on the North Korea. So this definitely is impacting the economy of North Korea, and this willingness to resolve issue comes from these crippling impacts on the North Korean economy. So that is one point. Another thing is that is very important is that the immediate trigger for this resumption of talks has been the Winter Olympics that are going to be held in South Korea. Now, this is also important from the point of soft diplomacy, that how instead of directly pushing the country to come to negotiation tables, a sidelined event like the Winter Olympics has infused newer spirit into talks. So this is important from that analysis as well. Now, the concern was that in the aftermath of this, the Winter Olympics are to be held in South Korea, but this in the aftermath of North Korea's nuclear program, this was somehow being feared globally that South Korea is not a safe place for conducting these Olympics. Also, this goes back to the 1988 attack on a civilian aircraft by North Korea when Olympics were held in Seoul. So those were some concerns, but these concerns have been assuaged with the resumption of dialogue between the two countries. Also, North Korea has expressed its willingness to participate in these Olympics, and this will further help calming fears globally. Also, the South Korean president, Mr. Moon, has for long advocated that negotiation is the only way to overcome the nuclear standoff. So that is another aspect, that both the countries are indeed willing to participate in this, though US was initially not interested in resuming dialogue with North Korea. It had placed conditions that North Korea should immediately go in for disarmament. But even the US has shifted its stance. China has supported because it is in the interest of China, as China is very much wary of the fact of excessive militarization in its backyard by the US. So that is the entire analysis of this editorial. Now, before I end, some piece of information. We are starting a UPSC Prelims cum Mains classes from the 6th of January 2018 at 10 a.m. We shall be covering all basics, which shall include the NCERT, the daily newspapers, a Prelims test series and mains answer writing on a daily basis. So if you are interested, please do get in touch with us. Also, pass on this information to all the interested candidates. Our contact details are given here. This is our address and this is our phone number. So with this, I finish today's discussion. I thank you all for watching and I hope to see you tomorrow. Thank you.